Follow Lily Turner, a young musician who transforms her passion into a movement that unites her community and beyond. Starting with performances at a local cafe, her journey grows into leading music workshops that inspire countless lives. Alongside her is Eli, a friend and partner whose relationship with Lily deepens as they face triumphs and setbacks. But as new opportunities and challenges arise, can Lily stay true to her roots and the spirit of her music? Join us for a story filled with hope, resilience, and the melodies that connect us all. Comment your thoughts and subscribe for more stories like this one. Let's dive into Lily's inspiring journey. The early morning sun cast a warm golden light over the city, illuminating the cobblestone streets and old brick buildings with a glow that hinted at hope and new beginnings. The quiet hum of waking life had begun to stir, with shopkeepers sweeping their doorsteps and street vendors setting up their carts. Amidst the growing bustle, Jonathan Brooks arrived at the entrance of his restaurant. Grace. Jonathan paused, keys in hand, taking a moment to admire the place he had built from the ground up. The glass doors reflected the amber hues of the morning light, and the elegant sign above read, "Grace," in looping, handcrafted letters. The restaurant was his pride, known not only for its exquisite dishes, but for the arts it fostered. Paintings from local artists adorned the walls, and a modest stage in the corner hosted musicians whose notes filled the space with warmth during evening hours. Jonathan, a man in his early 50s with graying hair that lent him an air of distinguished warmth, wore a tailored navy suit that spoke to his meticulous nature. He had always been a blend of business pragmatism and artistic soul, a rare combination that had made Grace a beloved fixture in the community. With a sigh, he unlocked the doors and stepped inside. The morning air was crisp and carried the scent of fresh coffee and polished wood. He flipped on the lights, casting a welcoming glow over the rich mahogany tables and carefully arranged chairs. Today was another day of maintaining the perfect balance of hospitality and artistry that had become Grace's signature. As Jonathan settled into the rhythm of opening the restaurant, a rustling noise caught his attention. He turned to see Emma Carter, Grace's manager, bustling in with a steaming cup of coffee and a clipboard filled with reservation notes. Emma, in her late 30s, had an air of calm efficiency, her brown hair tied back in a practical ponytail, and a perpetual glint of determination in her eyes. "Good morning, Jonathan," she said, setting her coffee down on the counter and flipping through her notes. "We have a full house tonight, so I'm confirming the musicians for the evening." "Morning, Emma," Jonathan replied, a faint smile creasing his face. He appreciated her dedication. "Let's make sure tonight feels as special as every night. The tourists are starting to trickle in with the warmer weather." Emma nodded, her eyes darting to the clock. "We'll have everything set up in time. And I've spoken to the head chef." Before she could finish, a quiet shuffling sound drew both their gazes to the front entrance. Sitting by the steps, partially obscured by the shadow of the doorway, was a small figure. The girl was huddled, her knees drawn to her chest, and a faded blue backpack clutched tightly. Her clothes were worn, jeans with frayed hems and a t-shirt that had long lost its original color. Strands of chestnut hair fell around her face, partially hiding her large, tired eyes. Jonathan's heart twinged at the sight. It wasn't the first time he had seen hardship. The city had its share of stories, each one a testament to resilience or loss. But something about the girl's stillness caught him. "Emma," he said softly, nodding toward the girl. Emma followed his gaze, her brows knitting with concern. Her professional instincts battled with her natural empathy. Grace was an upscale place, and such a sight could be unsettling to their clientele. Yet she couldn't just ignore the girl. "I'll talk to her," Emma said, stepping forward with her usual composed stride. As she approached, she adjusted her expression to one of cautious warmth. "Hello there," she said gently. "Are you all right?" The girl looked up slowly, revealing eyes that were far too knowing for her age. She couldn't have been more than 12, but the lines of worry etched on her face made her seem older. She stood up, wobbling slightly as if the simple act required effort. "My name is Lily Turner," she said, her voice small but steady. "I'm looking for a job. Anything that can help. My mom is sick, and we don't have anyone else. I need to buy food for us. Emma felt the weight of the words sink in. Behind her, Jonathan watched, his expression shifting from curiosity to a more serious concern. He stepped forward, his footsteps echoing softly against the polished floor. "How old are you, Lily?" he asked, his tone gentler than his usual businesslike cadence. 12, she replied, looking from Emma to Jonathan, hope flickering in her eyes. "I don't have a dad. It's just me and my mom." Jonathan exchanged a look with Emma. The restaurant was not a charity, and appearances mattered in their line of business. Yet Jonathan felt something stir within him, a memory of his own childhood struggles, moments when a simple act of kindness had changed the trajectory of his life. Emma shifted on her feet, a trace of hesitation in her gaze. "Jonathan, we should think this through. Our image—" "I know, Emma," Jonathan interrupted, his voice steady. "But we also need to think about the kind of place we want Grace to be." Turning back to Lily, he knelt slightly, meeting her eyes at her level. "Lily, what can you do? Do you have any special skills?" The girl's face brightened, a rare smile breaking through her tired expression. "I can sing," she said, her voice gaining strength. "My grandmother taught me songs when I was little. Before she passed." Jonathan felt a rush of emotion. Singing, music had always been an integral part of Grace's identity, and the idea of this girl's voice filling the restaurant seemed both improbable and perfect. "All right, Lily," he said, glancing at Emma, who finally nodded, her reservations softening into acceptance. "How about this? You sing for us tonight. If the customers like it, we'll talk about what comes next." Tears welled up in Lily's eyes, and she blinked them back with a nod. For the first time in weeks, she felt a small flame of hope ignite within her. "Thank you," she whispered. Jonathan stood, a sense of purpose settling over him. As he watched Lily, he knew that this moment was the beginning of something that would change more than just her life. It would alter the course of his and Grace's as well. The afternoon sun cast warm patterns of light across the walls of Grace as the kitchen staff bustled to prepare for the evening. Pots clanged, the scent of fresh herbs and roasting meats wafted through the air, and Emma checked her clipboard, ensuring that everything was in order. Every detail needed to be perfect, and tonight would be no exception. Lily sat in a small back room near the kitchen, her hands fidgeting in her lap. She wore a simple blue dress Emma had found in the lost and found box, slightly too big but clean and presentable. Emma stood nearby, watching with a mixture of concern and curiosity as the young girl tried to steady herself. "Are you nervous?" Emma asked, her tone softening from its usual businesslike precision. Lily nodded, eyes darting to the old guitar resting beside her. "A little. I haven't sung in front of people in a long time." Emma offered a small, reassuring smile. "It's okay to be nervous. Just remember why you're singing. Think of your mom and the songs your grandmother taught you." Lily's gaze softened, and she drew in a deep breath, nodding as she mentally anchored herself to those memories. Emma glanced at her watch. It was time. With a nod to Lily, she led her to the small platform in the corner of the restaurant. The evening crowd was starting to trickle in, the soft murmur of conversations mingling with the gentle clinking of cutlery. Jonathan stood by the bar, his eyes following Emma and Lily as they moved through the room. He caught Emma's eye and gave a slight nod of encouragement. Lily stepped onto the platform, the polished wood creaking under her slight weight. The chatter in the room dimmed as people turned to see what was happening. A few curious whispers floated through the air, and Lily felt the weight of 100 eyes on her. She took another deep breath, fingers trembling as she picked up the guitar. The instrument was old, its strings slightly worn but tuned as well as Emma could manage. Lily positioned her fingers, closed her eyes for a brief moment, and began to play. The first notes were hesitant, like a bird testing its wings, but soon her voice followed, clear and hauntingly beautiful. It filled the room, weaving through the air like silk, drawing the attention of every patron. The song was an old folk ballad, a melody passed down through generations, simple but powerful. Jonathan's expression shifted from neutral observation to quiet astonishment. The room fell silent as Lily's voice grew stronger, the initial tremble replaced by an emotional clarity that belied her young age. Her eyes remained closed, lost in the memory of singing with her grandmother by the fire, her mother's laughter ringing in her ears. The restaurant seemed to shrink in that moment, every soul captivated by the girl on the stage. As the last note hung in the air, a heavy, stunned silence followed. Then, like a spark catching dry wood, the room erupted in applause. Some patrons stood, clapping enthusiastically, while others blinked away tears, moved by the sincerity and purity of Lily's song. Lily opened her eyes, scanning the room with an expression of disbelief. She glanced toward Jonathan, who was clapping slowly, his eyes glistening with an emotion he hadn't felt in years. Emma, standing at the edge of the platform, offered a broad smile, her eyes proud and soft. "Lily, that was incredible," Emma whispered as the girl stepped down from the platform, her hands still trembling from the adrenaline. "Did they like it?" Lily asked, her voice tentative but hopeful. Emma's smile widened. "They loved it. You did wonderfully." Jonathan approached, his footsteps slow and deliberate. He placed a hand on Lily's shoulder, a rare gesture of affection. "You have something special, Lily. Thank you for sharing it with us tonight." For a moment, Lily felt the weight of the past few months lift, replaced by a warm, glowing sense of hope. This wasn't just about food or money anymore. This was a chance, a real chance, to change everything. The following day, the city woke to the usual rhythms of life, but within Grace, there was an undercurrent of excitement. The buzz from the previous night's performance had carried over, drawing in new patrons who had heard whispers of the young singer with the angelic voice. Jonathan sat in his office, his mind replaying Lily's performance. It had been years since anything in the restaurant had touched him so deeply. The phone on his desk rang, breaking his reverie. He glanced at the caller ID, Adam Lawson. Jonathan's childhood friend and owner of the city's most renowned art gallery, rarely called without good reason. "Adam?" Jonathan said, picking up the receiver. "To what do I owe the pleasure?" "I'm surprised you even have time to pick up the phone, Jonathan." Adam's voice boomed through the line, full of enthusiasm. "I heard something last night that was worth calling you first thing in the morning." Jonathan leaned back in his chair, intrigued. "What did you hear?" "The singer you had at Grace. Julia and I were there, and we were floored. Her voice is... well, I don't have the words. How long have you been hiding her from the world?" Jonathan chuckled, though a part of him felt the weight of Adam's words. "Hiding her? Adam, she just sang her first night here. She's new, and her story is complicated." "Complicated or not, Jonathan, you've stumbled onto something extraordinary. You need to nurture this." After a few more minutes of animated conversation, Jonathan hung up, a thoughtful smile playing at his lips. The excitement in Adam's voice echoed the growing buzz among the regulars, and Jonathan felt a spark of ambition reignite, something he hadn't felt in years. Stepping out of his office, he caught sight of Lily helping Emma polish glasses, a small smile on her lips as she listened to Emma's advice. Jonathan's heart swelled with an unfamiliar blend of pride and protectiveness. He knew that last night was only the beginning, and he was ready to see where it would lead. The gentle clinking of glasses and the faint scent of cinnamon and fresh bread drifted through Grace as the lunch hour drew to a close. Lily sat at a table near the window, watching as sunlight filtered through the lace curtains, casting warm patterns across the wooden floor. It had been a week since her first performance, and she had already become a quiet fixture in the restaurant, helping Emma and watching the ebb and flow of the daily crowd. Jonathan approached, setting down a plate with a warm sandwich and a small bowl of fruit. "You should eat, Lily," he said, his voice kind but firm. Lily looked up, her cheeks flushing with a mix of gratitude and embarrassment. "Thank you, Mr. Brooks," she said, picking up the sandwich carefully, as though afraid to disturb its neat arrangement. "Jonathan," he corrected gently. "Call me Jonathan." A small smile crossed her face. "Jonathan," she echoed. He sat down across from her, his eyes studying her carefully. She seemed better fed and more rested since that first day, but there was still a wariness in her gaze, as if she expected this newfound comfort to vanish at any moment. "Emma and I have been talking," Jonathan began, leaning forward and folding his hands on the table. "We'd like to know more about you, Lily, about your life, your mom, whatever you're comfortable sharing." Lily's fingers stilled on the edge of her sandwich. For a moment her eyes darted toward the window, where the city outside bustled with life, unaware of the conversation unfolding within. She took a deep breath, the kind that felt too big for her small chest, and let it out slowly. "My mom's name is Sarah," she began, her voice quiet and steady. "She used to be a teacher at a local elementary school. She always loved music and would play the piano in the evenings. That's where I learned to sing, sitting next to her on the bench, watching her fingers dance across the keys." Jonathan listened intently, picturing a young Lily perched beside her mother, absorbing the melodies and the warmth of those moments. "But then she got sick," Lily continued, her voice faltering slightly. "At first we thought it was just exhaustion. Teaching is hard, and she was always so dedicated. But it turned out to be more serious, a condition that made her weaker, with too many hospital visits and not enough answers." Emma had walked over quietly and now stood beside Jonathan, her expression softened by Lily's story. "We tried to manage, but it got harder. Mom couldn't teach anymore, and the bills kept piling up. I started taking care of things at home, cooking, cleaning, helping her get to appointments." Lily paused, her eyes growing glassy. "Then, when things got really bad, I knew I had to do something more." Jonathan's throat tightened. The idea of a child carrying that kind of burden cut through his usual pragmatic view of the world. Emma reached out, resting a hand on Lily's shoulder. "You shouldn't have had to do that alone," Emma said, her voice thick with emotion. Lily shrugged, a small, resigned gesture. "It's just how it was. But when I came here, it felt different. Singing for people, hearing them clap. It's like I'm not just a kid who's trying to survive. It feels like I have something to offer." Jonathan exchanged a glance with Emma, a silent understanding passing between them. They had known Lily was in need, but hearing her story put a raw, human face to the struggle. "Lily," Jonathan said, choosing his words carefully, "you do have something to offer, and while you're here, you're not alone. We're going to help you and your mom as much as we can." Lily blinked back tears, nodding, unable to find words for the gratitude that swelled in her chest. The room seemed quieter, as if the building itself was listening and acknowledging her story. As the afternoon sunlight began to fade, casting long shadows across the restaurant, Jonathan knew that his promise to help Lily wasn't just an act of kindness. It was the beginning of something that could change all their lives in ways they couldn't yet imagine. The late afternoon sun filtered through the large front windows of Grace, casting a warm, amber glow over the tables and illuminating the polished wood floors. Lily stood near the corner of the room, wiping down menus with careful attention. The week following her first performance had been a whirlwind. Each night, more patrons showed up, curious to hear the young girl whose voice had begun to create a buzz throughout the neighborhood. Jonathan watched her from across the room as he stood behind the bar, rearranging glasses and exchanging greetings with regulars. There was a lightness to his step that hadn't been there in years, a sense of anticipation each evening as the restaurant filled with the hum of voices waiting for Lily's song. Emma walked over, her usual clipboard tucked under one arm. "She's settling in well," she remarked, her voice low enough that only Jonathan could hear. Jonathan nodded, his gaze still on Lily. "She is, but it's more than that. She's given this place a kind of energy we didn't know we needed." Emma followed his gaze, a hint of a smile playing at the corner of her mouth. "It's more than just the restaurant, isn't it? You care about her." Jonathan didn't answer immediately. Instead, he watched as Lily laughed at something one of the servers said, her face lighting up in a way that seemed to erase the shadows of hardship he knew were still there. "Yes," he admitted quietly, "I do." As the evening crowd began to filter in, Emma moved to manage the front of house, directing servers and checking reservations. Jonathan took a deep breath, straightening his tie before walking over to Lily. "Ready for tonight?" he asked, his voice kind. Lily looked up, her eyes wide and bright, though tinged with nervous energy. "I think so. I've been practicing the new song all day." Jonathan nodded, resting a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Just remember, the people out there, they're here to hear you. Don't worry about perfection. Just sing with your heart." Lily's expression softened, and she gave a small, grateful nod. "I will." As the restaurant settled into the familiar rhythms of evening service, the time came for Lily's performance. Emma dimmed the lights slightly, signaling the shift in ambiance that always preceded the music. The conversations at the tables hushed, anticipation threading through the crowd. Lily stepped onto the stage, her fingers trembling as they touched the strings of her guitar. She glanced at the audience, finding Jonathan's encouraging smile and Emma's reassuring nod. Taking a breath, she strummed the first chord, the notes rich and steady. Her voice followed, soft at first, then growing as the melody built. The song was a tender ballad, one her grandmother used to sing, full of wistful notes and bittersweet memories. As she sang, the room seemed to hold its breath. The patrons drawn into the story her voice wove. The light from the nearby lamp cast a warm glow on her face, accentuating the determination and emotion in her expression. Halfway through the song, Lily's eyes drifted to the back of the room. A couple sat holding hands, their gazes locked on her with expressions that mirrored both joy and nostalgia. Across the room, a young woman dabbed at her eyes, caught off guard by the raw emotion in Lily's voice. Each note reached out, connecting with the listeners in a way that words alone could not. When the final chord faded, silence reigned for a heartbeat before the room erupted in applause. Some patrons stood, clapping with a fervor that made Lily's cheeks flush. She bowed shyly, a small, proud smile breaking across her face as she glanced at Jonathan and Emma. After the performance, the energy and grace was palpable. Guests lingered longer than usual, ordering desserts they hadn't planned on just to stay in the warm, musical glow that Lily had left behind. As the evening wound down and the last of the diners departed, Jonathan approached Lily, who was helping a server clear the last table. "You did well tonight," he said, his tone warm with pride. Lily beamed up at him. "Thank you. I felt, I don't know, like I wasn't afraid this time." Emma joined them, wiping her hands on a towel and smiling at Lily. "That's because you belong here," she said, the words simple but full of meaning. Lily looked at the two of them, her heart swelling with an emotion that she hadn't felt in so long. Security. For the first time in what seemed like forever, she believed that maybe, just maybe, things would be all right. The early morning light seeped through the thin, gauzy curtains of Lily's small room at Jonathan's home. She woke slowly, blinking against the soft glow, a bittersweet ache settling in her chest as the reality of the day ahead pressed down on her. Today was her mother's scheduled checkup at the city hospital, a day Lily both dreaded and hoped for. Jonathan had offered to take her, the concern in his voice clear when he'd spoken to her the night before. Emma had rearranged the restaurant's schedule so Lily could have the morning free. This kindness, though comforting, made Lily's heart squeeze. She wasn't used to people rearranging their lives for her. "Lily?" Jonathan's voice called from the hallway, accompanied by a light knock on her door. "Are you ready to go?" "Yes," she replied, swinging her legs over the edge of the bed. She quickly dressed in a simple blouse and jeans before opening the door to find Jonathan waiting, dressed in crisp white shirt and slacks, his usual warmth muted with concern. The drive to the hospital was quiet. The city's usual morning chaos played out beyond the car windows, but inside, a heavy silence settled between them. Jonathan stole a glance at Lily, who stared at her hands, fingers twisting nervously. "Everything will be fine," Jonathan said, his voice steady but not dismissive. He knew better than to offer empty promises. Lily nodded, forcing a small smile, but her mind buzzed with the what-ifs that had plagued her since her mother's last appointment. The car turned into the hospital's parking lot, the sprawling building casting long shadows under the morning sun. Jonathan parked, and they walked together toward the main entrance, the automatic doors sliding open with a mechanical hum that sent a shiver down Lily's spine. Inside, the sterile smell of antiseptic and the low murmur of voices wrapped around them. Nurses moved briskly through the halls, their scrubs a blur of blues and greens. Lily's heart pounded as they approached the reception desk. "We're here for Sarah Turner's appointment," Jonathan said, his deep voice carrying an authority that seemed to make the receptionist straighten a little. The receptionist checked her schedule and nodded. "Room 204. Dr. Barnes will be with you shortly." Jonathan guided Lily down the hallway, his hand hovering protectively near her shoulder. Room 204 was at the end of a long corridor lined with posters detailing various health conditions and reminders about flu shots. Lily's eyes skimmed over them, barely registering the words. They stepped into the room, a small, pale space with a bed, a single chair, and a window that offered a view of the parking lot. Sarah Turner lay on the bed, propped up by pillows. Her once vibrant hair was now streaked with gray, and her skin was pale, almost translucent. Yet her eyes lit up when she saw Lily. "Hi, sweetheart," Sarah said, her voice weak but full of love. "Hi, Mom," Lily replied, rushing to her side and taking her hand. It was cool and delicate, like porcelain. Jonathan stood by the doorway, giving them a moment but remaining close enough to offer silent support. "You brought Jonathan," Sarah noted, glancing at him with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Thank you for looking after my girl." "It's my pleasure," Jonathan said, his voice sincere. He moved to the chair and sat, resting his forearms on his knees as he looked at Sarah. "You raised an extraordinary young lady." Sarah squeezed Lily's hand, a shadow of pain flickering in her expression. "She's always been strong, stronger than she should have to be." Dr. Barnes entered then, a tall man with kind eyes and a calm demeanor. He offered a nod to Jonathan and Lily before turning his attention to Sarah. "Sarah, good to see you," he said, flipping through her chart. "I've reviewed your latest tests. The treatment has stabilized some of the issues, but there are still challenges ahead." Lily's breath caught in her chest, her eyes darting from the doctor to her mother. Sarah's smile faltered, but she met Lily's gaze with as much strength as she could muster. "Challenges?" Jonathan echoed, his voice tight. The word hung in the room like a shadow. Dr. Barnes sighed. "We'll need to discuss options. There may be a need for more intensive treatment, which would come with its own set of difficulties. But for now, let's focus on the positives. Sarah is fighting hard, and we're seeing some signs of improvement." Lily nodded, the weight of those words both a relief and a new burden. They stayed for the remainder of the appointment, speaking softly as the doctor detailed possible next steps and what Sarah's recovery might entail. Each word felt like it carried double its weight. But Lily held on to the promise of hope that Dr. Barnes offered, however fragile it was. On the way out of the hospital, Jonathan kept a steady hand on Lily's back, guiding her as she blinked against the sudden brightness of the day outside. They stood by the car for a moment, the distant sounds of city life a stark contrast to the sterile quiet of the hospital. "Lily, we'll figure this out," Jonathan said, breaking the silence. His eyes met hers, and she saw not just kindness, but a determination that made her feel, for the first time, that she wasn't facing this alone. A small, weary smile touched her lips. "I know," she whispered, and for the first time in what felt like years, she believed it. The next few weeks at Grace were a flurry of activity and growing anticipation. Word had spread about the young girl with the soulful voice, and more patrons flocked to the restaurant each night, eager for a seat where they could listen to her sing. The increased attention brought new challenges for Lily, balancing schoolwork, helping her mother, and meeting the expectations of an audience that seemed to grow with each performance. Jonathan and Emma noticed the strain, watching as Lily pushed herself to keep up with everything. She was determined, but her smile was sometimes tinged with exhaustion, and her eyes carried a hint of worry that never quite faded. One afternoon, Jonathan called Emma into his office. The room was lined with shelves filled with books and mementos, artifacts from the years he'd spent building Grace from a fledgling idea to a community cornerstone. "She's doing too much," Jonathan said, not bothering with preamble. He leaned back in his chair, his brow furrowed. "I see it in her eyes, Emma. She's tired." Emma sighed, setting her clipboard down on his desk. "I've seen it too, but she won't say anything. She's afraid of disappointing us, I think. We need to help her balance this. Maybe it's time to get someone to coach her, someone who can help her focus on the music without all the pressure," Jonathan suggested. Emma's eyes lit up with an idea. "I know someone who might be perfect, Olivia Stone. She's a retired music teacher who's worked with children and young artists, see. She'd understand Lily's situation and could help nurture her talent without pushing too hard." Jonathan nodded, the tension in his shoulders easing. "Contact her. Let's see if she's available to meet with Lily." The next day, Olivia Stone walked into Grace. She was in her late 50s, with salt and pepper hair styled in soft waves and a demeanor that exuded warmth. She wore a simple blouse and a pair of tailored slacks, and her eyes sparkled with curiosity as she surveyed the room. Jonathan greeted her, and after a brief introduction, he led her to where Lily sat, nervously twisting her fingers. "Lily, this is Olivia Stone. She's an experienced music teacher, and we thought she might be able to help you with your singing," Jonathan said, his voice steady and reassuring. Lily's eyes widened, a mix of excitement and apprehension passing across her face. "Hello, Ms. Stone," she said softly. "Please call me Olivia," the older woman replied, her smile gentle. "I've heard so much about you, and I'd love to hear you sing. Would you like to do a little practice with me today?" Lily glanced at Jonathan, who nodded, then looked back at Olivia with newfound determination. "Yes, I'd like that." They moved to the small stage, where the afternoon light filtered through the windows, casting a golden glow. Olivia sat at the piano and played a few scales, guiding Lily through warm-up exercises before shifting to a simple, familiar melody. "Remember, Lily," Olivia said, her voice calm but firm. "The audience doesn't just want to hear your voice, they want to feel the story you're telling. Sing from here." She touched her chest lightly, over her heart. Lily closed her eyes, letting the notes settle within her. She began to sing, and with each verse, Olivia nodded in encouragement. Jonathan and Emma watched from the side, exchanging a glance filled with hope. There was something new in Lily's voice today, a confidence that hadn't been there before, a small flame growing stronger. When she finished, Olivia clapped lightly, her eyes bright with approval. "Beautiful, Lily. You have a gift, and we're going to help you refine it." Lily's heart lifted, the weight of exhaustion temporarily forgotten. She felt seen, supported, and ready for whatever came next. The lessons with Olivia brought a new structure to Lily's life. Each session was filled with technical training, scales, and exercises meant to enhance her control and range. Olivia also emphasized the importance of pacing herself, teaching her how to balance the demands of performance with rest. Jonathan watched with pride as Lily's confidence grew. The restaurant saw even more patrons now, each performance building her reputation. But behind the scenes, Lily still struggled with the pressures of her mother's health. The visits to the hospital continued, each one a reminder of how delicate Sarah's condition remained. One afternoon, after an intense rehearsal, Olivia sat beside Lily on the stage, the piano keys glistening in the soft light. "You're doing wonderfully, Lily," she said, "but I can see the worry in your eyes. You don't have to shoulder everything alone." Lily glanced down, fingers tracing a pattern on the piano bench. "I'm just scared that if I don't keep going, everything will fall apart." Olivia's expression softened. "You're not alone in this. You have Jonathan, Emma, and me. And it's okay to lean on people who care about you." Lily nodded, a lump forming in her throat. It was something she needed to hear, even if part of her still struggled to believe it. That evening, after the restaurant closed, Jonathan called Lily over to a table where Emma sat, sipping tea and going over the day's receipts. He had noticed the fatigue in Lily's performance that night, the slight waver in her usually strong voice. "Lily," Jonathan began, his tone gentle but serious, "I want you to remember that we're here for you, not just as a performer, but as part of our family. If you need to take a break or step back, you have that space." Lily's eyes filled with tears she hadn't realized she was holding back. The thought of taking a step back, even for a moment, felt like admitting defeat. But looking at Jonathan and Emma, she saw not judgment, but unconditional support. "Thank you," she whispered, the weight on her chest lightening just a little. "I'll try to remember that." Jonathan reached out and squeezed her shoulder. "Good. Now get some rest." As Lily walked up the stairs to the small room she called her own, she felt a strange sense of peace settle over her. For the first time, she believed that maybe it was okay to take a breath, to let others share the weight she carried. And that belief, fragile as it was, would be what kept her going through the days ahead. The posters for the benefit concert at Grace had been up for weeks, each one designed by Emma and printed in bright, inviting colors. Word of mouth had spread quickly, and the restaurant was set to host one of its largest gatherings yet. The purpose of the night was twofold: to support Sarah's treatment and to celebrate the community that had rallied around Lily and her mother. On the afternoon of the concert, the restaurant buzzed with energy. Jonathan moved through the dining area, ensuring each table was perfectly set. Emma coordinated the servers and double-checked the list of guests. The scent of freshly baked bread and simmering sauces filled the air, mingling with the notes of a string quartet warming up in a corner. Lily sat backstage with Olivia, who tuned the old guitar that had become a familiar presence in Lily's performances. Olivia adjusted a string and handed the instrument back, her expression warm. "Remember, Lily, tonight isn't just about the performance. It's about sharing who you are with the people who care about you," Olivia said, her voice steady and reassuring. Lily nodded, taking a deep breath. She wore a dress that Emma had chosen for her, a simple but elegant blue that highlighted her eyes. She glanced at her reflection in the mirror, seeing both the determined girl who had fought for every small victory and the child who still longed for her mother's embrace. The sound of laughter and conversations filtered through the walls as guests arrived, the noise growing louder and more vibrant with each passing minute. Jonathan poked his head backstage, his expression a mix of excitement and pride. "Lily, it's almost time," he said, his voice soft but charged with meaning. She smiled at him, a smile that trembled at the edges but held. "I'm ready," she whispered, more to herself than to anyone else. The restaurant lights dimmed, signaling the start of the event. The quartet stopped playing, and the soft murmurs of the audience quieted as Jonathan stepped onto the stage. He held a microphone in one hand and surveyed the room, his gaze settling on familiar faces, regulars, neighbors, and friends who had come to show their support. "Thank you all for being here tonight," Jonathan began, his voice resonating with sincerity. "Grace has always been more than a restaurant. It's a place where stories are shared, and tonight, we're here to celebrate one of those stories. Lily Turner has touched many of us with her voice, and tonight, we're here to return that gift." Applause rippled through the crowd, warm and eager. Jonathan stepped back as Lily took her place at the center of the small stage. The room seemed to hold its breath, the light casting a soft glow around her. She glanced toward the back of the room and found her mother's eyes. Sarah sat in a wheelchair, a blanket draped over her lap. Though her face was pale, her eyes shone with pride and love. Beside her, Jonathan stood with his hands clasped, his expression unwavering in its support. Lily brought the guitar strap over her shoulder, the familiar weight grounding her as she began to strum the opening chords. The first song was a ballad, one that spoke of resilience and hope. Her voice, clear and strong, carried through the room, filling every corner with its warmth. The melody wrapped itself around the listeners, drawing them into the story she wove with each note. As she sang, memories floated through her mind. Her mother's laughter, the songs her grandmother once sang, the quiet nights when fear threatened to consume her. But tonight, those memories no longer felt heavy. They were part of the tapestry that made her whole. By the time she reached the chorus, the audience was enraptured. Tears glistened in a few eyes, and some patrons exchanged glances, moved by the raw emotion in her performance. Jonathan felt a lump in his throat as he watched Lily, pride swelling in his chest. Emma stood nearby, a hand over her mouth as she blinked back tears. When Lily finished, the applause was immediate and thunderous. She lowered the guitar, a blush rising in her cheeks as she bowed slightly. The room seemed to shimmer with the energy of the moment. "Thank you," she said into the microphone, her voice barely above a whisper but carrying a power that reached everyone. The evening continued with other performances, local musicians who had volunteered to support the cause. Each song added a new layer to the night, but it was Lily's voice that remained the highlight, drawing people into the warmth of her story. Between sets, patrons approached Sarah, offering words of encouragement and well wishes. The sense of community was palpable, each kind word and handshake weaving an invisible net of support around her. Toward the end of the night, Lily returned to the stage for her final song. This time, she chose one of her own compositions, a song she had written for her mother. The lyrics spoke of love that endured through hardship, of the quiet strength passed from parent to child, and of the hope that carried them through even the darkest nights. Jonathan felt his eyes blur as he listened, the depth of Lily's words striking a chord in him that resonated long after the final note faded. The room fell silent, as if everyone needed a moment to absorb what they had just heard. Then, once more, the applause roared, and this time, it was accompanied by shouts of admiration and cheers. Lily's eyes found Sarah's, and they shared a look that spoke volumes. It was a look that said they would keep fighting, that they were more than their struggles, and that they had found a family in this room full of people who believed in them. Jonathan stepped forward, taking the microphone. "Thank you all for being here and for supporting Lily and Sarah. Tonight has shown what a community can do when it comes together. Thank you for making Grace more than just a place to eat. It's a home." The applause continued as Jonathan glanced at Lily, his eyes reflecting the promise of many more nights like this. She nodded, a small, hopeful smile crossing her lips. And in that moment, surrounded by the people who had become her family, Lily knew that whatever came next, she would face it with her heart full and her voice strong. The concert at Grace became the talk of the neighborhood. Patrons shared stories of Lily's voice echoing in their hearts long after the final notes had faded, and donations continued to pour in over the following week. Jonathan, Emma, and even Olivia felt the momentum shift as more people came to Grace, not just for the food, but to be part of the warmth and music that defined the restaurant's spirit. But amid the flurry of attention and support, Lily's heart remained tethered to a quiet corner of worry: her mother. The benefit concert had helped raise funds for Sarah's treatment, and with Jonathan's guidance, the process for her surgery had been set in motion. But with hope came the gnawing fear of the unknown, and Lily found herself staring at the ceiling in the middle of the night, whispering silent prayers into the darkness. The morning of Sarah's surgery arrived with a chill in the air, as though the world itself held its breath. Jonathan picked Lily up early, the sky still tinged with the soft hues of dawn. Emma had insisted on opening the restaurant that day, allowing Jonathan to be with Lily and Sarah at the hospital. Lily sat in the passenger seat, her fingers tapping anxiously against her thigh. Jonathan glanced at her, the concern in his eyes barely masked by his attempts to stay calm. "You don't have to say anything, Lily, but just know I'm here," he said, his voice breaking the silence gently. She managed a nod, the lump in her throat making it difficult to speak. The rest of the drive was quiet, each turn of the road bringing them closer to the sterile, clinical world of the hospital. Inside, the waiting room buzzed with activity. Nurses in crisp uniforms moved briskly through the hallways, the low hum of conversations and the occasional beeping of medical equipment filling the air. Sarah was already prepped and resting in a room down the hall, her face pale but her eyes bright with reassurance when Lily entered. "Hey, sweetheart," Sarah said, reaching out for Lily's hand. Her grip was weaker than usual, but the warmth remained. Jonathan hovered in the background, giving them space while his own heart raced with a mix of hope and anxiety. "I'm here, Mom," Lily whispered, tears pricking her eyes as she fought to stay strong. "And you're going to be okay." Sarah nodded, her smile soft but determined. "We'll be okay, Lily. No matter what, we'll always have each other." A nurse entered to let them know it was time, and Jonathan stepped forward, placing a comforting hand on Sarah's shoulder. "You have the whole community behind you, Sarah," he said. "We'll be right here when you wake up." Sarah's eyes shone with gratitude, and she looked at Jonathan for a moment longer than usual, as though seeing not just a friend but something deeper, a part of their new family. As they wheeled Sarah away, Lily felt a wave of helplessness crash over her. Jonathan guided her back to the waiting room, where the hours stretched out, punctuated only by the ticking of a clock that seemed louder than it should be. The minutes turned to hours, and the sterile smell of antiseptic became a background note that Lily couldn't shake. Jonathan offered her a sandwich, but she pushed it aside, unable to eat. He sat beside her, silent but steady, as the weight of waiting settled over them both. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Dr. Barnes walked into the waiting room, his face composed but edged with weariness. Lily shot to her feet, Jonathan close behind. "The surgery went well," Dr. Barnes said, a smile breaking through his professional demeanor. "Sarah is stable, and we'll need to monitor her closely over the next few days, but things are looking positive." Lily's legs wobbled as relief flooded her, and Jonathan's hand on her shoulder kept her grounded. Tears slid down her cheeks, but this time they were born of hope, not fear. "Can I see her?" Lily asked, her voice trembling. "Not yet," the doctor replied, his tone gentle. "She's still in recovery, but you'll be able to visit soon." Jonathan guided Lily to a chair as she let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "She's okay, Jonathan," she whispered, looking up at him with wide, tear-filled eyes. "She's going to be okay." He smiled, the corners of his eyes crinkling as the tension of the past hours eased. "Yes, she is, Lily. You both are." The following days were a blur of hospital visits and cautious optimism. Sarah's condition improved steadily, and the color began to return to her cheeks. Jonathan often drove Lily to the hospital after her practices with Olivia, the car rides filled with stories of her day, each tale meant to distract them both from the fragility of Sarah's recovery. One afternoon, as Lily sat beside her mother's bed, Jonathan stood at the window, the city below bustling with life. The sun cast a warm glow into the room, making it feel less clinical and more like a room filled with hope. "Mom," Lily said, breaking the comfortable silence, "Jonathan's been so good to us. He's done so much." Sarah's eyes met Jonathan's, a gratitude in them that words couldn't capture. "I know, sweetheart," she said, her voice still weak but stronger than before. "And we're lucky to have him." Jonathan turned, feeling the weight of Sarah's gaze. "I was thinking," he began, choosing his words carefully, "it might be easier for both of you if you moved in with me for a while, just until you're back on your feet." Lily's eyes widened, and she looked to her mother, who seemed both surprised and touched. Sarah blinked, tears gathering at the corners of her eyes. "Jonathan, we couldn't possibly—" "It's not charity," he interrupted, his tone firm but kind. "It's what family does, and whether you realize it or not, you two have become part of mine." A moment of silence followed. Then Sarah nodded, her tears spilling over. "Thank you, Jonathan. We'd be honored." Lily's heart swelled with a mixture of relief and joy. The prospect of being in a place that felt safe, surrounded by people who cared, was a gift she hadn't dared to dream of. The move to Jonathan's home was both a relief and an adjustment. His house, a cozy two-story nestled in a quiet neighborhood, offered more comfort and warmth than Lily had known in a long time. The first few days were filled with unpacking, arranging rooms, and acclimating to a place that now felt like a shared sanctuary. Sarah, though still weak, seemed lighter in spirit, buoyed by the steady support around her. For Lily, the mornings were a whirlwind. Each day started with breakfast in the sunlit kitchen, where Jonathan made scrambled eggs and toast while Sarah sipped tea at the table, watching with quiet amusement. Emma often stopped by with news of the restaurant or to drop off fresh bread and pastries. But today was different. Today marked the start of Lily's journey at the St. James School of Music, a prestigious institution known for nurturing young talent. Jonathan had helped secure a scholarship that would cover most of the costs, and the rest had been taken care of by donations from the benefit concert and contributions from the community. The excitement thrummed in Lily's chest, mixed with a twinge of nervousness as she prepared for her first day. "You're going to do great," Sarah said, reaching out to smooth an imaginary wrinkle on Lily's shirt. Her touch was gentle, but the determination in her eyes was clear. "I'm proud of you no matter what." Lily's heart swelled, and she hugged her mother tightly. "I'll make you proud, Mom." Jonathan was waiting by the front door, car keys in hand. He offered a reassuring smile as Lily approached. "Ready?" She nodded, taking a deep breath. "As ready as I'll ever be." The drive to St. James took them through the heart of the city, past bustling cafes and bookshops, their windows gleaming in the morning light. When they arrived, the school stood tall and stately, its stone facade adorned with ivy and banners, announcing upcoming concerts and performances. "Remember, this is your journey," Jonathan said as he parked the car and turned to her. "Take your time, learn as much as you can, and don't forget to enjoy it." Lily smiled, her nerves settling under the weight of his words. "I will." Inside the school, the hallways hummed with the sound of students practicing instruments and chatting in groups. The air was rich with excitement and a hint of nervous energy that seemed to unite them all. Lily followed the directions to the main rehearsal room, where the orientation for new students was being held. The room was spacious, with tall windows that let in beams of sunlight, casting intricate patterns across the wooden floor. Students sat in rows, some with violins or sheet music, others cradling guitars or simply sitting with expectant expressions. Lily found a seat near the middle and took in her surroundings, feeling both out of place and exactly where she needed to be. "Hey," "Is this your first day too?" a voice whispered from her left. Lily turned to see a girl with short curly hair and a bright smile. She wore a t-shirt with the name of a local band printed across the front. "Yeah," Lily replied, her smile tentative but genuine. "I'm Lily." "I'm Mia," the girl said, extending a hand. "I'm here for piano and composition." "You?" "Vocals and guitar," Lily said, feeling a bit of her anxiety melt away under Mia's friendly gaze. Before they could continue talking, the room quieted as an instructor stepped to the front. Mr. Callahan, a tall man with silver hair and a crisp suit, surveyed the room with a practiced eye. "Welcome to St. James," he said, his voice carrying a blend of authority and warmth. "You're here because you have something special, a talent that deserves to be nurtured. But talent alone isn't enough. You'll work hard, you'll fail, and you'll grow. And in the end, you'll create something beautiful." Lily felt the words resonate in her chest, each one embedding itself alongside the melodies she carried inside her. The first day passed in a blur of introductions, orientation tours, and the start of classes. Lily sat through music theory, where the complexities of notation and chord progressions were explained in detail. In her vocal class, the instructor, Mrs. Reyes, had each student sing a few bars of their choice. When it was Lily's turn, she stood before the small group, heart pounding as she began a simple folk song. Her voice, though nervous at first, found its strength as she sang. The room was quiet, each note wrapping around the students and instructor like an invisible thread. When she finished, Miss Reyes gave a small nod, her eyes crinkling at the corners with approval. "Beautifully done, Lily," she said. "I look forward to seeing what you bring to this class." The day ended with a rush of students gathering their things and making plans for the next day. Lily felt a strange mix of exhaustion and exhilaration as she walked out of the building and found Jonathan waiting in the car, his face lighting up when he saw her. "How was it?" he asked as she slid into the passenger seat. "It was amazing," she said, the smile breaking across her face unbidden. "It was hard, but I loved every minute." Jonathan chuckled, pulling out into the traffic. "Good. I knew you would." The days at St. James turned into weeks, each one filled with new challenges and moments of growth. Lily pushed herself, balancing school with helping at Grace and spending time with her mother. She practiced for hours, her fingers growing calloused from guitar strings, her voice gaining strength and nuance under Miss Reyes's guidance. One day, a notice on the bulletin board caught her eye. The school was holding auditions for a showcase at the renowned Brighton Theatre, an event that could bring young performers to the attention of local producers and critics. Mia found her staring at the flyer, a grin spreading across her face. "You should try out," she said, nudging Lily's arm. "Your voice could fill that entire theater." Lily bit her lip, the idea both thrilling and terrifying. "I don't know. What if I'm not good enough?" Mia rolled her eyes playfully. "You'll never know if you don't try. Come on, Lily. You've got this." With encouragement from Mia, Jonathan, and Olivia, Lily decided to audition. The preparation was intense. Long hours spent perfecting her song choice and practicing in empty classrooms after school. Olivia's advice echoed in her mind during each rehearsal. "Don't just sing the notes, Lily. Sing the story. Let people see what you feel." The day of the audition came with a morning drizzle that left the city shrouded in a soft gray mist. Lily stood backstage at Brighton Theatre, the grand hall beyond her buzzing with the whispers of other students waiting their turn. The heavy velvet curtains felt like a barrier between her and the unknown, but she pressed her palm against them, drawing courage from their solid presence. Jonathan and Emma sat among the audience, their faces a mix of pride and anticipation. Sarah, not well enough to attend, had given Lily a hug that morning, her whispered, "You'll be wonderful," echoing in Lily's mind. A stagehand called her name, and Lily stepped out onto the stage, the lights casting a warm glow that made it difficult to see the audience clearly. The piano began to play, and Lily closed her eyes, taking a deep breath before the first note left her lips. The song started softly, a ballad about hope and resilience, one that spoke to the journey she and her mother had endured. Her voice grew stronger with each line, filling the theater with a story that was uniquely hers. The final note lingered, reverberating in the silence that followed. For a moment there was no sound but the distant creak of a chair. Then applause erupted, growing into a standing ovation that sent a shiver down Lily's spine. She blinked, the bright lights catching the tears that formed in her eyes as she took a deep bow. In the audience, Jonathan's hands stung from clapping, and Emma's eyes were bright with unshed tears. They exchanged a look, knowing that this was just the beginning for Lily. The buzz from the Brighton Theatre showcase lingered long after the final performance. The praise Lily received from teachers and fellow students was almost overwhelming, and she even caught the attention of a local music producer who approached her after the show to express interest in future collaborations. Jonathan and Emma, filled with pride, hosted a small gathering at Grace to celebrate her achievement. The restaurant glowed with warm lights and laughter as friends and patrons congratulated Lily on her success. But the warmth of that night was soon tempered by another visit to the hospital. Sarah's health had taken an unexpected dip, and despite her determination, it was clear she needed more intensive care. The news weighed on Lily, even as she tried to focus on her studies and upcoming opportunities. One afternoon, after another long day at school, Lily arrived at the hospital for a visit. She found Jonathan already there, sitting in the chair beside Sarah's bed. He looked up as Lily entered, the crease in his brow smoothing out as he smiled. "Hey, sweetheart," Sarah said, her voice thinner but still laced with warmth. "Hi, Mom." Lily kissed her mother's cheek before settling into the chair on the other side of the bed. The room was filled with the soft, rhythmic beeping of monitors, an ever-present reminder of their reality. Jonathan cleared his throat, shifting in his chair. "Lily, Sarah, and I were talking earlier," he began, his tone gentle but serious. "We were talking about our pasts." Sarah's eyes met Jonathan's, a look passing between them that Lily couldn't quite read. A sense of anticipation fluttered in her chest as she glanced from one to the other. "Mom?" she prompted, her voice wavering. Sarah took a deep breath, her fingers fidgeting with the corner of the blanket. "There's something I should have told you a long time ago," she said, looking at Lily with eyes that glistened with unshed tears. "When you were little, before we moved here, I knew Jonathan. We met in the small town where I grew up. He was there on business, but we spent time together, time that was very special to me." Lily's eyes widened, the pieces starting to shift and click in her mind. She turned to Jonathan, who nodded, his expression filled with emotion. "I didn't realize it until recently," Jonathan said, his voice low and strained. "The way you sing, Lily. The way your voice carries the same emotion and strength as someone I once knew. Your mother." Lily's heart raced as she tried to make sense of what they were saying. The room seemed to narrow, the sounds of the hospital fading into a distant hum. "Jonathan was part of our lives before we left the town, before everything changed," Sarah said. "We lost touch, and life took us down different paths. But fate has a strange way of bringing people back together." Lily's breath caught in her chest, the weight of their words settling over her like a blanket. "So when we came to Grace, you didn't know?" she asked Jonathan, her voice barely a whisper. Jonathan shook his head, his eyes shimmering with regret and wonder. "Not at first, but seeing you, hearing you sing, it brought back memories I'd pushed away. And then, meeting Sarah again, it all started to fall into place." Tears pricked Lily's eyes as the realization hit her fully. Jonathan wasn't just a kind stranger who had helped them. He was part of their story, part of the past that had shaped them all. A silence settled over the room, heavy but not suffocating. It was the kind of silence that spoke of revelations and unspoken promises. Lily reached out, taking both her mother's and Jonathan's hands, feeling the warmth of connection pulse between them. "We're more than just friends," Jonathan said, looking at Sarah and then at Lily. "We're family, and I promise, from now on, we'll face everything together." Sarah's eyes softened, a tear slipping down her cheek as she smiled. "Thank you, Jonathan," she said, her voice fragile but full of meaning. Lily's heart, though heavy with the weight of her mother's illness, felt a new kind of strength take root. The uncertainty of the future no longer felt like a burden she had to carry alone. They sat there for a while longer, the unspoken truth binding them in a way that words never could. The past and present had collided, revealing a path forward that was steeped in both love and resilience. The revelation changed everything. In the days that followed, Jonathan spoke with Sarah and Lily about what it meant to be a family, not just in name, but in heart. The idea of formalizing their bond, of Jonathan adopting Lily, had come up during one of their late-night talks. It was a decision that filled Lily with both excitement and trepidation. One evening, after closing the restaurant, Jonathan sat with Lily in the living room, the quiet hum of the city filtering in through the open window. "Are you sure this is what you want?" Jonathan asked, his voice soft as he studied her expression. Lily nodded, her fingers fiddling with the edge of a pillow. "Yes, you've been more than a guardian to me, Jonathan. You've been a father." His eyes shone with unshed tears as he reached out and pulled her into a hug. "Then it's settled. We'll make it official." The process moved quickly, thanks to Jonathan's connections and the support of the community. Emma and Olivia, along with many of the regulars at Grace, rallied around them, offering their help and celebrating the decision. The adoption ceremony was simple but heartfelt, held at the restaurant with close friends and family in attendance. Sarah sat in a chair at the front, wrapped in a warm shawl, her eyes bright with emotion as she watched Lily stand beside Jonathan. Emma stepped forward, a smile breaking across her face as she looked at them. "This isn't just a legal formality," she said. "It's the recognition of what's already true. That family is made by the love and support we give each other." Jonathan signed the papers, his hand steady as he wrote his name next to Lily's. When it was Lily's turn, she took the pen, her hand trembling slightly, and signed her name in looping, deliberate letters. When it was done, the room erupted in applause, the sound filling the restaurant and spilling out into the street, where passers-by paused to see what the celebration was about. Lily turned to Jonathan, tears streaming down her cheeks as she whispered, "Thank you." Jonathan's embrace was strong and sure. "No, Lily. Thank you for making my life whole." The days after the adoption ceremony passed in a blur of shared meals, laughter, and quiet evenings filled with music. The restaurant Grace became more than just a place of work or dining. It was a hub of stories, resilience, and newfound family ties. The community that had supported Lily and Sarah continued to grow, drawn by the warmth that radiated from Jonathan, now officially Lily's father, and the heartfelt songs she performed each night. But with stability came new challenges and opportunities. One evening, after a particularly moving performance, a man with a sharp suit and friendly smile approached Jonathan and Lily as they sat together at a table. He introduced himself as Robert Mason, a music producer with a keen ear for talent and a reputation for helping young artists find their voice in the industry. "I've been following your performances here, Lily," Robert said, his voice tinged with excitement. "Your talent is rare, and I'd like to offer you a chance to record a single at my studio." Lily's eyes widened, her breath catching as she processed his words. A chance to record. A real, professional recording that could reach far beyond the walls of Grace. She glanced at Jonathan, searching his face for approval. Jonathan's smile was warm, though tinged with the caution of a protective father. "What do you think, Lily?" he asked, giving her the space to choose. "I'd love to," Lily said, her voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions inside her. She turned to Robert. "What would it involve?" Robert explained the process, from selecting a song to spending long hours in the studio perfecting each note. It was an opportunity that would demand dedication and time, but it was one that could open doors Lily hadn't dared to dream of. The next week, Lily found herself standing in a state-of-the-art recording studio, its walls lined with acoustic panels and shelves of awards. Robert greeted her with a nod as she settled behind the microphone, headphones snug over her ears. The song she'd chosen was one of her own, a piece she'd written on a quiet evening when the weight of her mother's illness felt heavy, but hope still lingered. "Remember, Lily," Robert said through the speaker, his voice clear but distant in her headphones, "just sing it like you're at Grace. Sing it for the people you love." She nodded, taking a deep breath as the familiar chords of the piano track filled her ears. The room seemed to shrink until it was just her, the microphone, and the words that had come to mean so much. As she sang, her mind drifted to her mother sitting in the living room at home, Jonathan standing with pride behind the bar at Grace, and the community that had lifted them when times were darkest. Each note carried that emotion, and when she finished, The studio was silent for a moment before Robert's voice crackled through the headphones. "That was incredible, Lily. Let's do one more take, just for safety." The hours passed in a blur of retakes, adjustments, and whispered words of encouragement from Robert. By the time the final take was done, Lily felt a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. She stepped out of the booth, meeting Jonathan's gaze as he stood in the corner of the studio, his eyes bright with pride. "You did it," he said, wrapping her in a hug. "I'm so proud of you, Lily." "Thank you, Dad," she whispered, the word Dad still new and thrilling on her tongue. Over the next few weeks, the song was mixed and produced, Robert inviting Lily back to listen to the final version before its release. The first time she heard it, polished and clear, she felt a shiver run down her spine. It was her voice, but it was more than that. It was the story of everything they had overcome, captured in 3.5 minutes of music. When the song was released on digital platforms, the response was immediate and overwhelming. Messages poured in from listeners who had been moved by the lyrics and Lily's heartfelt performance. Offers for interviews and local performances followed, and the name Lily Turner began to spread beyond their corner of the city. But with the excitement came a new set of challenges. Lily's schedule filled quickly, balancing school, practice, and appearances. Jonathan and Emma worked tirelessly to help manage her commitments, but the weight of it all sometimes left Lily lying awake at night, wondering how long she could keep going without losing the parts of herself that mattered most. One evening, after a long day of school and rehearsals, Lily sat in the kitchen, the house quiet around her. Sarah walked in, her steps slower than before but steady. She placed a hand on Lily's shoulder, her eyes understanding. "You've been working so hard," Sarah said, taking a seat beside her. "Remember that it's okay to take a moment for yourself. The music is important, but so are you." Lily nodded, the tension in her shoulders easing at her mother's words. "I just don't want to let anyone down, Mom. Not after everything." Sarah's smile was gentle. "You could never let us down, Lily. Just keep doing what you love, and we'll be here for you." Jonathan walked in, catching the end of their conversation. "And that goes for me, too," he added, placing a cup of tea in front of Lily. "We're in this together, remember?" Lily's heart swelled with gratitude as she took a sip of the tea, its warmth spreading through her. The journey ahead was still uncertain, but with Jonathan, Sarah, and the support of their community, she felt ready to face whatever came next. The release of Lily's single brought a whirlwind of activity that neither she nor Jonathan had fully anticipated. The song climbed the local charts, gaining traction through social media and word of mouth, spreading far beyond the city limits. Offers for live performances at community events and charity galas flooded in, and Lily found herself being recognized at school, at Grace, and even on the street. At first, the recognition was thrilling. Each event felt like a new adventure, each song a step further on a path she'd only dreamed of. But as the weeks wore on, the demands of balancing school, music, and family took their toll. Even her evenings at Grace, which had once been a source of comfort, felt rushed and crowded with expectations. One Friday evening, as Lily prepared for another performance at Grace, Emma noticed the tension in her face. The usual spark in Lily's eyes had dimmed, replaced by an exhaustion that worried Emma. "Hey," Emma said softly, pulling Lily aside before she stepped onto the stage. "You've been pushing yourself hard. Are you sure you're up for tonight?" Lily forced a smile, adjusting the strap of her guitar. "I'm fine, Emma." "Really?" Emma's eyes narrowed slightly, but she nodded, knowing Lily was as stubborn as she was determined. "Okay. Just remember it's okay to rest." The performance began, and as Lily played the familiar chords, the audience leaned in, drawn by the emotion that usually laced her songs. But tonight, something was different. The notes felt heavy, and her voice, though technically perfect, lacked the warmth that had once come so effortlessly. By the time the song ended, the applause felt more subdued than usual, polite but lacking its usual fervor. Jonathan, who had been watching from the back, noticed. He exchanged a concerned glance with Emma as Lily stepped off stage, her expression unreadable. After the last guests left, Jonathan found Lily sitting at the piano, her fingers absently tracing the keys. The restaurant was quiet, the lights dimmed, casting long shadows across the room. "Lily?" Jonathan said as he approached, his voice low and careful. "Can we talk?" She looked up, the fatigue evident in the set of her shoulders and the dark circles under her eyes. "I know what you're going to say," she said, forcing a laugh that didn't quite reach her eyes. "That I need to take a break." Jonathan sat beside her, the old bench creaking under their combined weight. "Yes," he admitted, "but not just because you're tired. Because I don't want you to lose the joy in what you're doing. You've worked so hard, but it's okay to step back and find your balance." Lily's gaze dropped to her lap. The idea of stepping back felt like admitting failure, like letting down everyone who had supported her. "What if I stop and everything falls apart?" she whispered. "It won't," Jonathan said, his voice steady, "because you have more than just this. You have us, you have your mother, and you have the music itself. That won't go away." A tear slid down Lily's cheek, and she wiped it away quickly. She felt a wave of relief and guilt crash over her, tangled together in a way that made her head spin. "I'm scared, Jonathan. Scared of failing, scared of not being enough." Jonathan reached over, taking her hand in his. "You're enough, Lily. Whether you're singing for a crowd or sitting here in the quiet, you are enough." The words settled into the corners of her heart, softening the tightness that had been building for weeks. She nodded, a small smile breaking through the cloud of worry. "Maybe I could take a little break," she admitted, the words tentative but sincere. Jonathan's smile grew. "Good. We'll figure it out together." The decision to step back, even slightly, brought immediate changes. Lily reduced her appearances at Grace to twice a week, and declined a few performance invitations that would have pushed her beyond what she felt ready for. At first the guilt gnawed at her, but with each evening spent at home, playing music just for herself or talking with Sarah, she felt lighter. Sarah's recovery was progressing, albeit slowly. She had more energy now, enough to spend evenings in the living room listening to Lily play for her and Jonathan. These moments became a balm, a reminder of why Lily had started singing in the first place. One night, as Lily strummed her guitar softly, playing a song she hadn't performed for anyone but her mother, Sarah reached over and touched her hand. "This is the Lily I know," Sarah said, her eyes glistening with tears. "The one who sings because she loves it, not because she feels she has to." Lily looked up, a lump forming in her throat. "I missed this, Mom. I didn't realize how much." "You have a beautiful gift, my love," Sarah continued. "But it's yours to share on your terms. Remember that." The next day, Lily met with Olivia at St. James for her usual lesson. The older woman watched her with an appraising eye as they ran through vocal exercises, noting the subtle change in Lily's posture and the lightness in her voice. "You sound more like yourself today," Olivia said, a smile creasing her face. "What changed?" Lily paused, considering the question. "I think I remembered why I started this in the first place," she replied, her voice soft but sure. "And I remembered that it's okay to rest." Olivia nodded, her smile deepening. "Good. That's a lesson some artists take a lifetime to learn." As the weeks turned into months, Lily found a balance that felt true to her. She took on performances that excited her, declined those that didn't, and found joy in the quiet moments spent with Jonathan and Sarah. The song that had brought her initial recognition continued to spread, drawing new opportunities her way, but now she chose carefully, knowing that her happiness came from more than just the applause. The winter season brought a crisp chill to the city, dusting rooftops with frost and painting the windows of Grace with delicate patterns. The restaurant buzzed with the warmth of conversation, laughter, and the ever-present scent of cinnamon and roasting meats. Lily had settled into her new routine, balancing school, music, and time with her family. The past months had taught her to pace herself, to listen to her heart as well as her ambition. One afternoon, Olivia called Lily into her office at St. James after their lesson. The room was cozy, lined with books and sheet music that had seen years of use. Olivia sat behind her desk, a sparkle of excitement in her eyes. "I have some news that I think you'll want to hear," Olivia said, sliding a flyer across the desk. It was for the Winter Lights Music Festival, a prestigious event known for showcasing the best local talent and drawing producers, musicians, and critics from all over the region. "They're holding auditions for solo acts," Olivia continued, watching Lily's reaction. It's an opportunity that could take your career to the next level. I think you should consider auditioning." Lily's breath caught, a familiar mixture of excitement and anxiety bubbling up. The festival was a major event. Performing there could mean exposure she had only dreamed about. But with the opportunity came the shadow of pressure, the kind that had nearly overwhelmed her before. "I'd love to," she said after a pause, her voice steadying as she met Olivia's gaze. "But I want to do it on my own terms. If I'm going to audition, it has to be a song that means something to me." Olivia's smile widened. "That's exactly what I was hoping you'd say. Take your time choosing the piece. We'll start rehearsing as soon as you're ready." The walk home that evening was filled with a biting wind, but Lily barely noticed. Her mind raced with possibilities, snippets of lyrics and melodies weaving through her thoughts. When she stepped through the front door, Jonathan and Sarah were in the kitchen, sharing a laugh over a recipe book. The scene grounded her, and a smile spread across her face as she set her bag down. "I have news," she said, catching their attention. Jonathan looked up, raising an eyebrow. "Good news, I hope?" "I'm going to audition for the Winter Lights Music Festival," Lily announced, a hint of excitement in her voice. Sarah's eyes widened, a proud smile breaking across her face. "Lily, that's incredible. You've worked so hard for this." Jonathan walked over, resting a hand on her shoulder. "We're behind you, whatever you need," he said, his voice warm with encouragement. Over the next few weeks, Lily threw herself into preparations. She chose an original song, a piece she'd been working on that spoke of resilience and hope. It was inspired by the journey she and her mother had taken, woven with the stories of the people who had lifted them along the way. Olivia worked with her on refining each note, helping her shape the song so that it built to a powerful climax. The days were long, filled with school and practice, but this time Lily felt a balance. She didn't push herself past exhaustion, and when she needed to rest, she did so without guilt. Emma organized a small gathering at Grace one evening, inviting regulars and close friends to hear Lily perform her song in preparation for the audition. The restaurant was lit with strings of white lights, their soft glow casting a warm ambiance over the room. When Lily stepped onto the small stage, she took a deep breath, the familiar faces in the audience giving her strength. Jonathan and Sarah sat at their usual table, their eyes shining with pride. "This song is for everyone who's helped me find my way," Lily said, her voice strong but laced with emotion. She strummed the first chord, and the room fell silent as her voice rose, clear and unwavering. The song unfolded, each lyric telling a piece of her story. The fear, the hope, the quiet moments of doubt, and the overwhelming joy of finding family and support. The final note hung in the air, wrapping the room in a stillness that buzzed with energy before the applause erupted. Emma was the first to stand, clapping with tears in her eyes. The rest of the audience followed, the sound washing over Lily like a wave. Jonathan and Sarah exchanged a glance, their hearts full, knowing that whatever happened at the festival, Lily had already succeeded in the most important way. The day of the Winter Lights audition arrived with the sky a cold steel gray. Lily bundled herself in a thick coat and scarf, the chill in the air doing little to calm her nerves. Jonathan and Sarah walked with her to the entrance of the performance hall, their presence a steady source of comfort. "Remember," Jonathan said as they stopped outside, "no matter what happens today, we're proud of you. You've already come so far." Lily nodded, hugging them both before stepping inside. The hall was filled with the soft murmur of other hopefuls and the echo of instruments being tuned. She registered, receiving a number and being directed to wait in a holding area until her name was called. The minutes ticked by slowly, each second amplifying the thump of her heartbeat. She glanced around at the other performers, some dressed in bright costumes, others muttering lyrics under their breath. The pressure threatened to creep back in, but she closed her eyes, breathing deeply until the noise faded. "Lily Turner," a stagehand called, signaling it was her turn. She stood, the weight of the moment settling over her as she walked out to the stage. The theater was vast, its rows of seats empty save for a handful of judges seated near the front. Their expressions were neutral, pens poised over clipboards. Lily took her place, adjusting the strap of her guitar and taking one last deep breath. She met the eyes of one of the judges and saw a flicker of interest. The first chord rang out, filling the space, and Lily let herself sink into the music, letting the story flow through her voice. As the song unfolded, she forgot about the judges, the empty seats, and the stakes of the audition. It was just her and the music, her voice carrying the emotions of everyone who had brought her to this moment. The final note resonated in the quiet hall, and for a heartbeat, there was only silence. Then a soft rustle as the judges exchanged looks, one nodding and jotting a note before turning back to her with a small smile. "Thank you, Lily," the head judge said. "We'll be in touch." Lily exhaled, her hands trembling slightly as she bowed and left the stage. She stepped into the cool hallway, the rush of adrenaline fading into a quiet sense of accomplishment. Outside, Jonathan and Sarah waited, their faces anxious but hopeful. When Lily walked out, they read the answer in her smile and pulled her into a hug, the cold air around them filled with the warmth of a family that knew whatever came next. They would face it together. The days following the audition were filled with anticipation. Each time the phone rang, Lily felt her heart skip a beat, and Jonathan would exchange a knowing glance with her before answering. The world outside seemed to move at its usual pace, but within their home time felt suspended, stretched thin with the tension of waiting. One morning, as frost glittered on the windows and the city outside hummed to life, the call finally came. Lily was sitting at the kitchen table, a cup of tea warming her hands, when Jonathan's phone buzzed on the counter. He picked it up, his eyes meeting hers before he answered. "Hello?" he said, his voice steady. Lily watched every shift in his expression, her breath caught in her chest. "Yes, she's here," Jonathan continued, a smile spreading across his face. "Thank you so much for calling." He handed the phone to Lily, his eyes sparkling. "It's for you." Lily's fingers trembled as she took the phone. "Hello? Hello, Lily. This is Amanda Mitchell from the Winter Lights Festival. I'm calling to let you know that the judges were incredibly impressed with your audition. We would like to invite you to perform at the festival as one of our featured young artists." A stunned silence followed before a wave of emotion crashed over her. "Thank you so much," she managed, her voice thick with disbelief and joy. I can't believe it." "You earned it, Lily," Amanda said, her voice warm. "We'll be in touch with more details, but for now, congratulations. We're excited to have you join us." The call ended, and Lily set the phone down, staring at it as if it might disappear. Jonathan and Sarah, who had been listening anxiously, waited for her reaction. "I got in," Lily whispered, her voice breaking. "I'm performing at the festival," Jonathan whooped, pulling her into a tight hug. "I knew it," he said, his voice full of pride. Sarah's eyes glistened as she reached for Lily, wrapping her in an embrace filled with silent, overwhelming joy. The news spread quickly, and soon the entire community knew that their Lily was going to perform at the prestigious Winter Lights Festival. Grace became a hub of congratulations, with patrons stopping by to wish her well, and regulars recalling her first tentative performances. As the festival approached, the excitement was tinged with an undercurrent of pressure. The festival was more than just a local event. It attracted industry professionals, music critics, and artists from across the region. Olivia worked tirelessly with Lily to refine her performance, pushing her to reach deeper into the emotion of the song and perfect every note. "Remember," Olivia said one afternoon as Lily worked through the chorus, "the audience wants to connect with you. Let them see who you are through the music." Lily nodded, wiping sweat from her brow. The rehearsals were intense, but she embraced them, determined to make the most of the opportunity. Still, there were moments when the doubt crept in. Late at night when the house was quiet and only the sound of the city murmured outside her window. What if she wasn't enough? What if the stage lights revealed her flaws instead of her strengths? One evening, as she sat at the piano in the dimly lit living room, Jonathan joined her, a cup of tea in his hands. He watched her fingers glide over the keys, the music soft and contemplative. "Can't sleep?" he asked, breaking the quiet. Lily shook her head. "I keep thinking about the festival. What if I mess up, Jonathan? What if all of this is too much?" He set the cup down and sat beside her, the old piano bench creaking under his weight. "You're going to be nervous, Lily. That's normal. But remember why you're doing this. It's not for the applause or the recognition. It's because you love it. And everyone who cares about you knows that." She looked at him, taking in the reassurance in his eyes, and let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "Thanks, Dad," she said, the word anchoring her in a way that felt both new and familiar. The night of the Winter Lights Festival arrived with a crisp chill in the air and the first hint of snow in the clouds. The theater was grand, decorated with lights that glittered like stars, drawing crowds that filled the seats until there was no space left. The buzz of anticipation hung thick, punctuated by murmured conversations and the shuffle of programs. Backstage, Lily stood in a corner, her guitar strap slung over her shoulder. The sound of other performers warming up filled the space, but she focused on the rhythm of her breathing, willing her nerves to settle. "You're up in 5, a stagehand said, giving her a nod. Lily nodded back, her heart pounding as she adjusted her dress, a simple but elegant gown that Emma had helped her pick out. Jonathan and Sarah had found seats near the front, their presence a calming beacon in the sea of faces. The announcer's voice echoed through the speakers. "And now please welcome Lily Turner, performing her original piece, Echoes of Home." Applause rose as she stepped into the light, the heat of the stage lamps warming her skin. The theater was a dark mass beyond the bright glow, but she knew Jonathan, Sarah, and so many others were there, watching with love and pride. The first notes of her song filled the air, and the tension in her shoulders eased as she sang. Each verse was a piece of her journey, a tribute to the people who had held her up, the nights spent practicing, the quiet moments with her mother, and the embrace of a community that had become her anchor. Her voice, clear and full, carried the stories she had lived and the hope she now held. As the final chord echoed, silence blanketed the room for a heartbeat before applause surged, louder and more vibrant than she'd ever heard. People stood, clapping and cheering, their faces a blur of smiles and admiration. Lily bowed, tears glistening in her eyes, and as she glanced down at Jonathan and Sarah, she saw them standing with the crowd, pride radiating from them like a warm light. Backstage, the energy was electric, and fellow performers congratulated her with nods and smiles. Olivia caught her eye from the wings, giving her a thumbs up that made Lily's heart swell with gratitude. The days following the festival were filled with interviews, articles praising her performance, and more opportunities than she could have imagined. But this time, Lily approached them with a newfound sense of balance. She said yes to the ones that excited her, and no to the ones that didn't feel right. Jonathan and Emma worked to support her schedule, ensuring that she never lost sight of what mattered most: her love for music, and her connection to the people who had helped her find her voice. Sarah's health, while still fragile, stabilized, and she continued to be a source of encouragement and grounding for Lily. One evening, as snow fell softly outside, they gathered in the living room, the glow of the fireplace casting a golden light. Lily sat at the piano playing a gentle tune as Jonathan and Sarah listened, their hearts full. "This is just the beginning," Jonathan said, his voice filled with pride and promise. "But no matter where it takes you, we'll always be here." Lily smiled, the keys warm under her fingers. "I know, and that makes all the difference." The room filled with music, a melody of hope, resilience, and family. And as the notes floated through the air, they carried with them the truth Lily had come to know, that her journey was not just her own, but a shared song that would continue to grow, with every verse richer than the last. The days following the Winter Lights Festival were a whirlwind of activity. The attention Lily's performance garnered brought not just praise, but a flood of offers and invitations. Producers wanted meetings, local radio stations asked for interviews, and there were even inquiries about small tours in neighboring towns. The sudden influx of opportunities was exhilarating, but Lily quickly realized it came with its own set of pressures. Jonathan and Emma helped her sift through the offers, keeping her schedule manageable while maintaining her school commitments and time with family. Lily wanted to seize the momentum, but was determined not to lose herself in the rush of success. It was Olivia who reminded her of this during a quiet afternoon lesson. "You're talented, Lily, but remember that your voice isn't just for others," Olivia said, tapping the sheet music lightly. "Keep it for yourself, too." Lily nodded, the reminder settling into her heart like a touchstone. One of the invitations that stood out came from a well-respected local music show called Melodies of the City, which featured live performances by up-and-coming artists. The show had a loyal following, and performing there could expand her audience even further. When she brought the idea to Jonathan and Sarah, their support was immediate. "You're ready for this," Jonathan said, pride lighting up his face. Sarah, sitting on the couch with a blanket over her knees, reached out to take Lily's hand. "I can't wait to watch you perform on TV," Sarah said, her eyes shimmering with excitement. "It'll be like you're singing to the whole city." The show's producer, a cheerful woman named Teresa Collins, invited Lily to the studio a week later to discuss the performance. The building was bustling with activity, sound engineers adjusting equipment while camera crews prepared for the upcoming taping. Teresa welcomed Lily warmly, her eyes sharp but kind as she spoke. "We loved your performance at the Winter Lights Festival," Teresa said, flipping through notes. "For your appearance on Melodies of the City, we want you to play the song that moved everyone at the festival. It's personal, and it connects with people." Lily agreed, feeling a thrill at the prospect of performing for a wider audience. The following week was spent refining the song with Olivia and rehearsing on the stage at Grace, where regulars offered enthusiastic encouragement. The day of the show came faster than expected. Jonathan drove Lily to the studio, the car filled with quiet anticipation. Sarah stayed at home, ready to watch the broadcast from the comfort of the living room. Emma promised to join her, bringing along a warm thermos of tea and extra blankets. As Lily stepped into the bright studio, the weight of the moment pressed down, but it was familiar now, almost comforting. Teresa greeted her backstage, running through last-minute details and microphone checks. When it was time, Lily walked out under the glare of the stage lights and the quiet hum of the audience. The host introduced her, and the applause rippled through the studio, muted but sincere. She closed her eyes for a moment, picturing Jonathan and Sarah, their unwavering support a balm to her nerves. The first chords of her song rang out, and her voice rose, filling the space with the story she had carried through every hardship and hope. As the song ended, the applause was immediate and genuine, the host's voice chiming in with praise. The show concluded with Lily feeling a new kind of satisfaction, an understanding that she could share her voice with the world and still hold on to the joy that had sparked it. After the show aired, messages poured in from friends, strangers, and even people she hadn't heard from in years. The response was overwhelming in the best way. A few days later, a manager from a reputable agency contacted her, offering representation and the possibility of a more structured path into the music industry. Jonathan invited the manager, a poised woman named Claire Morrison, to Grace for a meeting. Claire outlined what representation would mean: studio time, potential record deals, and larger performances. But she was upfront about the commitment it would take. "This is a big step, Lily," Claire said, looking directly at her. "It will open doors, but it will also mean more work, more time away from the comforts of home." Lily listened, the excitement tinged with apprehension. The thought of expanding her career was thrilling, but she remembered Olivia's words, the nights spent with Sarah, and the quiet moments playing music just for the love of it. "Can I think about it?" Lily asked, her voice steady but thoughtful. Claire nodded. "Of course. Take your time. This decision should feel right." After the meeting, Jonathan sat with Lily in the now empty restaurant. The glow of the pendant lights cast warm pools on the polished tables. "What are you thinking?" he asked. Lily took a deep breath. "I'm grateful for the opportunity, but I don't want to rush into something that might take me too far from everything that matters. I need to find a balance." Jonathan's face softened with pride. "That's a wise choice, Lily, and whatever you decide, we'll support you." The following evening, Lily sat with Sarah, their hands wrapped around warm cups of tea. "What do you think, Mom?" Lily asked, wanting her mother's perspective. Sarah's gaze was tender, filled with understanding. "You've worked so hard, Lily, but your music is a gift, not just a goal. Follow the path that lets you hold on to what makes you happy." Lily smiled, a decision solidifying in her mind. She would take on the opportunities that allowed her to grow, but on her own terms, preserving the heart of why she sang. With Claire's help, Lily agreed to sign with the agency, but with a clear agreement that she would pace herself. The first project would be an EP, a short collection of original songs that reflected her journey. From the nights of quiet playing at home to the grand stage of the Winter Lights Festival. The process was intense but invigorating. Jonathan and Sarah were there every step of the way, celebrating each milestone and offering support during the challenges. Emma and the team at Grace held a special pre-release event, inviting the community that had lifted Lily to where she was now. On the night of the release, the restaurant was filled with familiar faces. Jonathan stood behind the bar, a proud smile never leaving his face, while Sarah sat near the stage, her eyes alight with happiness. Olivia and Emma mingled, chatting with guests about Lily's journey and the stories that inspired her songs. Lily stepped onto the stage, looking out at the people who had become her extended family. She played one of the songs from the EP, the notes dancing through the room and weaving a tapestry of love, resilience, and gratitude. When she finished, the applause was thunderous, echoing with the shared joy of everyone present. Lily took a bow, her heart full, knowing that whatever came next, she had everything she needed: music, love, and the people who made her feel at home, and that was more than enough. The release of Lily's EP marked a turning point in her life and career. The collection of songs resonated with listeners, garnering positive reviews and drawing attention from music publications and bloggers. The heartfelt nature of her lyrics and the purity of her voice stood out in an industry often saturated with spectacle over substance. But with each new accolade came the reminder of why she started this journey. Not for fame, but for the love of music and the support of her family and community. The response to the EP was stronger than even Claire had anticipated. She called Lily into the agency's office for a meeting that felt different from their usual check-ins. The room buzzed with energy as Claire shared the latest updates. "Lily, a regional tour is on the table," Claire said, leaning forward with a gleam of excitement in her eyes. "Small venues, intimate shows where you can connect with audiences the way you do at Grace. It's the perfect next step." Lily's heart leaped at the idea, but she quickly tempered her excitement. "What would that mean for my schedule? For school and spending time with my family?" Claire's expression softened. "It would be a commitment, a few weeks at a time, but we can work around your classes and breaks. The idea is to keep it manageable." That evening, as she walked home under a sky brushed with the orange and pink hues of sunset, Lily's thoughts whirled. A tour could be incredible, an adventure that would allow her to share her music more widely. But it would also mean time away from Jonathan and Sarah, from the comfort of the home they had built together. At dinner that night, she brought up the idea. Jonathan listened intently while Sarah's expression shifted between pride and concern. "A tour, even a short one, is a big step," Jonathan said. "Are you ready for that kind of experience?" "I think so," Lily said, glancing at Sarah. "But I don't want it to come at the cost of what we have here." Sarah reached across the table, her hand warm as it clasped Lily's. "We'll miss you, of course, but this is part of your dream. We'll be here, cheering you on." The decision wasn't easy, but with their blessing, Lily agreed to the tour. The plan was to perform at small venues known for fostering genuine connections between artists and audiences. Claire's team worked to organize the logistics, booking venues from their city to nearby towns with strong music scenes. The first stop on the tour was a cafe in a neighboring town, known for its open mic nights and local talent showcases. The space was cozy, with wooden tables and strings of fairy lights that cast a warm glow. Lily stood backstage, listening to the murmur of the audience, her guitar in hand and her heart pounding. When her name was called, the applause was warm and welcoming. She stepped onto the small stage, taking in the sea of faces that looked up at her expectantly. She smiled, a mixture of nerves and excitement bubbling inside her. "Hi, I'm Lily Turner," she said into the microphone, her voice steadying as she continued. "This song is for everyone who's found their way with a little help from the people they love." The opening notes of Echoes of Home filled the space, and Lily felt the familiar comfort of the music settle over her. She sang with all the emotion she'd carried from her performances at Grace to this new chapter. The audience responded with rapt attention, some swaying gently, others closing their eyes as if the music had drawn them into their own memories. By the time the last chord faded, The cafe erupted in applause. A few people stood, clapping and cheering, their smiles reflecting the connection they'd felt. Lily bowed, gratitude washing over her as she stepped off the stage. After the show, patrons approached her with kind words and questions about her music. An older couple shared how one of her songs had reminded them of their youth, while a young girl with wide eyes asked for an autograph. Explaining that she was learning to play guitar, Lily signed the girl's notepad with a smile. "Keep practicing, and always play for the love of it." The girl beamed, her excitement palpable, and Lily felt a warmth bloom in her chest. It was moments like these that reminded her why she was on this journey. As the tour continued, Lily experienced both the thrill of performing and the challenges of being away from home. The long drives between venues, the late nights, and the pressure of keeping her voice in top condition took their toll. Jonathan called often, his voice steady with encouragement and updates about Grace and Sarah. One evening, after a show in a bustling college town, Lily sat alone in her hotel room, the quiet pressing in. She missed the comforting sounds of home, the way Jonathan's laughter filled the kitchen, and the warmth of Sarah's gentle advice. She called home, relieved when Sarah answered. "Mom, how are you feeling?" Lily asked, her voice soft with the strain of the day. "I'm doing well, sweetheart," Sarah said, the smile evident in her tone. "I'm more worried about you. How are you holding up?" Lily hesitated, tears stinging her eyes. "I miss you. I love the music, but it's hard sometimes being away." "We miss you too, but you're doing something amazing," Sarah replied. "And remember, we're just a phone call away." The call ended with Lily feeling both comforted and homesick, the distance between them a reminder of what she was striving for. The next day, she woke with renewed energy, determined to make each performance count, not just for herself, but for the family waiting for her at home. The final stop on the tour was back in their city, at a venue that overlooked the river. The show was sold out, with people from the community, friends from school, and loyal patrons of Grace filling the seats. Jonathan and Sarah sat front and center, their faces lit with anticipation. Lily stepped onto the stage, taking in the familiar faces, and the sight of Jonathan and Sarah beaming at her. The warmth in their eyes steadied her, and as she played the first notes of her song, the room seemed to breathe with her. Each verse was a tribute to the challenges she had faced, the people who had lifted her up, and the love that had carried her through. The applause at the end was thunderous, and as Lily bowed, she felt tears blur her vision. This time they were tears of joy, of gratitude. After the show, she rushed to Jonathan and Sarah, wrapping them in a hug that spoke of everything words couldn't capture. They held her tight, the three of them together, a reminder that no matter how far she traveled or how much her career grew, this was home. As they left the venue, the cold night air nipped at their faces, but it didn't matter. The path ahead was still uncertain, but it was one Lily knew she would walk with the people she loved by her side, step by step. The applause from her final show still echoed in Lily's mind as she settled back into life at home. The familiar creaks of the old wooden floors in Jonathan's house, the smell of fresh bread baking at Grace, and the soft murmur of her mother's voice were a balm to her senses. The tour had been an experience she would never forget, but being home filled her with a different kind of contentment, one she cherished even more after the long weeks on the road. For a while, life resumed its steady rhythm. Lily returned to school, practicing for her classes at St. James and performing at Grace, where regulars eagerly shared stories of their favorite songs from the tour. The restaurant buzzed with energy, and Emma kept things lively with her quick wit and warm smile. Jonathan, ever the supportive father, had set up a small corner in the restaurant where Lily's EP and signed posters could be found. It was a quiet nod to her success, and a reminder to every visitor of what could be achieved with perseverance and community support. But even as the routine settled in, there was a new undercurrent in Lily's life, a pull toward what was next. The tour had opened doors she hadn't anticipated, including invitations to collaborate with other artists and opportunities to co-write songs. One afternoon, as she walked through the park with Sarah, a soft breeze ruffling the early spring leaves, they talked about everything that had changed. "I'm proud of you, Lily," Sarah said, her eyes squinting against the sun as she looked at her daughter. You've come so far, but you still seem like the same girl who used to sing for me in the living room." Lily laughed, the sound light. "I don't think I could ever change that much, Mom. I'd miss these moments too much." Sarah's smile faded slightly as she took a breath, her hand tightening around Lily's. "Promise me you'll keep that part of you no matter what happens. The world out there can be loud, but you don't need to shout to be heard." The words lingered with Lily long after their walk ended, a quiet reminder of what mattered most. With spring came new faces at St. James and Grace. One afternoon, Olivia introduced a transfer student, Eli Carter, who had recently joined the school's music program. Tall, with curly hair and an easygoing grin, Eli quickly became known for his guitar skills and unique songwriting style. Lily first met Eli when Olivia paired them for a songwriting workshop. The task was simple: write an original piece that combined both of their styles. At first, Lily felt a twinge of nervousness. She had always written alone, pouring her thoughts onto the page in solitude. But as they sat in one of the practice rooms, guitar cases propped open and sheets of scribbled notes scattered around, the awkwardness melted away. "So what's your usual starting point?" Eli asked, strumming a gentle chord that hummed through the quiet room. "Usually lyrics," Lily said, tapping her pen against her notebook. "I start with a feeling or a memory." "Perfect," Eli replied, his eyes lighting up. "Let's try this. Tell me the first line that comes to your mind, and I'll see if I can match it." A smile played at Lily's lips as she thought back to a morning spent watching sunlight filter through the kitchen window. "How about, 'The morning light whispered promises we never spoke'?" "Ooh." Eli's fingers moved across the strings, weaving a soft melody that resonated with the words. They spent the next few hours layering verses and testing harmonies, their ideas bouncing off each other in a rhythm that felt natural. By the time the sun dipped below the horizon, they had a rough version of a song that captured something tender and hopeful. As they left the practice room, Eli turned to her. "This was fun, Lily. I'd love to work on more songs together." "Me too," she said, surprised by how true it felt. Collaborating with Eli reminded her of the way music could connect people, blending different stories into one shared experience. The song they had written together, tentatively titled Morning Promises, was chosen to be part of a showcase at St. James. Students, faculty, and friends gathered in the school's auditorium, filling the space with an eager hum. Jonathan, Sarah, and Emma sat near the front, their smiles and quiet encouragement a constant source of strength for Lily. When it was their turn, Lily and Eli stepped onto the stage. The soft spotlight cast a warm glow over them as Eli strummed the opening chords. Lily closed her eyes, letting the music center her before she began to sing. The lyrics spilled out, painting a picture of hope and quiet moments that lingered long after the dawn. The harmonies they'd practiced came naturally, their voices blending seamlessly. Eli's guitar playing filled the room with a steady, gentle pulse, and Lily felt the energy of the audience as if they were breathing in time with the music. As the last note faded, a silence held for just a moment before applause erupted, enthusiastic and sincere. Lily opened her eyes, meeting Jonathan's proud gaze and Sarah's tearful smile. Eli grinned, giving her a nod that spoke of shared triumph. After the performance, a local producer approached them, intrigued by their song and their chemistry as performers. "I think there's something special here," he said, his eyes alight with possibilities. "Have you thought about recording this piece professionally?" The question opened a door Lily hadn't considered before, collaborating beyond a single performance, creating something that could reach even more people. She glanced at Eli, who raised an eyebrow, a grin tugging at the corner of his mouth. "What do you think?" Eli asked. Lily smiled, the answer already forming in her heart. "I think we should see where this takes us." Over the next few weeks, Lily and Eli worked tirelessly to refine Morning Promises and prepare for their first professional recording session. Jonathan and Sarah supported her, their encouragement unwavering as they watched her balance school, family, and the excitement of a new chapter. The recording studio felt different this time. It wasn't just Lily. It was a team effort, filled with laughter, shared stories, and long hours that blurred into nights. The producer, Nick Alvarez, brought a keen ear and a relaxed approach that made the process feel less like work and more like a creative adventure. When the song was finished, polished, and ready for release, Lily invited everyone who had been part of her journey to grace for a private listening party. The restaurant, decorated with string lights and filled with the scent of freshly baked goods, hummed with anticipation. As the first notes played through the speakers, the room quieted. Lily's eyes found Sarah's, then Jonathan's, and finally Eli's. The song filled the space, carrying with it the essence of every moment that had brought them here. The late-night practices, the laughter, the doubts, and the joy. When the last chord faded, the room erupted in applause. Jonathan wrapped an arm around Lily, his voice full of pride. "You did it again, Lily, and this is only the beginning." Lily's heart swelled, and as she looked around at the faces of those she loved, she knew he was right. The future was full of unknowns, but it was also filled with music, family, and the promise of what was yet to come. The weeks after the private listening party at Grace were filled with anticipation. The recording of Morning Promises had been completed, mixed, and polished to perfection, and the official release date approached like the countdown to a long-cherished dream. The buzz around Lily and Eli's collaboration grew, fueled by whispers from local radio hosts and social media chatter. The morning of the release, the song debuted on streaming platforms, accompanied by a simple yet heartfelt video they had filmed in a sunlit park, capturing the song's essence of hope and quiet moments. Jonathan had helped arrange the video shoot, offering both advice and warm encouragement while Sarah watched proudly from her spot on a picnic blanket nearby. By midday, the initial feedback was already rolling in. Positive comments flooded social media. People resonated with the song's message, sharing their own stories of small, treasured moments that reminded them of their loved ones. Playlists and local music blogs began featuring Morning Promises, and requests for interviews followed suit. At St. James, students and teachers alike congratulated Lily, their excitement palpable. Olivia, who had been watching from the sidelines with a knowing smile, pulled Lily aside after class one afternoon. "You've done something beautiful, Lily," Olivia said, her voice carrying a tone of pride and nostalgia. "This song is a testament to who you are and what you bring to the world. Remember that as you go forward." The following weekend, Grace hosted a small celebration to mark the song's success. The restaurant was bustling with regulars, friends, and new faces drawn by the buzz around Lily's music. Emma moved through the crowd with plates of pastries, her laughter bright and contagious as she shared stories of Lily's first performances. Jonathan called for everyone's attention, tapping his glass to quiet the room. "Tonight we celebrate Lily's latest song and the people who've supported her along the way," he said, his eyes sweeping the room before landing on Lily. "But most of all, we celebrate the joy she brings into our lives with her music." Applause filled the room, and Lily, her cheeks flushed with happiness, took the stage for an impromptu performance. Eli joined her, guitar in hand, and together they played Morning Promises, the notes weaving through the crowd like an old friend. The success of Morning Promises brought opportunities that felt almost surreal. One day, an email arrived from a festival organizer inviting Lily and Eli to perform at the Spring Sounds Festival, a well-known event that featured emerging and established artists. The festival promised exposure to a wider audience and the chance to collaborate with musicians from different genres. Jonathan beamed when he read the invitation with Lily, pride shining in his eyes. "This is a huge step," he said, "and you've earned every bit of it." Sarah, seated beside them, reached out to squeeze Lily's hand. "You're going to be amazing," she said softly. "Just remember to take it one song at a time." The festival preparation brought a new level of commitment. Rehearsals grew longer as Lily and Eli fine-tuned their set list and worked on harmonies that would stand out. The weeks leading up to the performance were a mix of excitement and fatigue, punctuated by late-night calls with Jonathan offering words of encouragement and Sarah reminding her to rest. Eli, ever the optimist, kept the mood light during their rehearsals. "This festival is going to be unforgettable," he said one evening as they wrapped up practice. "But no matter what happens, I'm glad we're doing this together." Lily smiled, feeling the truth of his words settle into her heart. "Me too," she said, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. Their partnership had become more than just a musical collaboration. It was a friendship built on trust and shared passion. The day of the Spring Sounds Festival dawned clear and bright, with a crisp breeze that carried the scent of freshly bloomed flowers. The venue buzzed with energy as musicians set up and festival-goers gathered, the grounds humming with anticipation. Backstage, Lily felt a familiar mix of nerves and excitement as she watched the crowd grow. Jonathan and Sarah were in the audience, their seats close enough that she could see Sarah's scarf fluttering in the breeze. Emma and Olivia were there too, waving when they spotted her peeking from behind the curtain. Eli joined her, guitar in hand. "Ready for this?" he asked, his grin confident but kind. "As ready as I'll ever be," Lily replied, taking a deep breath. The MC's voice rang out across the field. "Please welcome, performing their hit Morning Promises, Lily Turner and Eli Carter." Applause erupted as they stepped onto the stage, the bright afternoon sun warming their faces. The opening chords of Morning Promises carried on the wind, and Lily closed her eyes for a moment, centering herself before she began to sing. Her voice, strong and clear, wove through the crowd, drawing listeners in and casting a spell that left even the noisiest corners of the festival still. The song unfolded with the same warmth that had filled her during its creation, and when Eli's harmonies joined hers, they created a resonance that echoed into the blue sky. As the last note lingered, the applause rolled in like a wave, people clapping and cheering, their faces lit with appreciation. Lily scanned the audience, her eyes locking with Jonathan's as he stood, clapping with unabashed pride. Sarah's smile shone like a beacon, and Emma's whistle could be heard even over the crowd. The festival performance opened more doors than Lily had imagined. A producer from a major label approached them after the show, intrigued by their sound and the sincerity of their performance. "You two have something unique," he said, offering his card. "We'd love to discuss a potential project." Eli looked at Lily, excitement sparking in his eyes. "What do you think?" he asked. Lily glanced at Jonathan and Sarah in the distance, their expressions a blend of pride and hope. Turning back to Eli, she smiled, feeling the weight of possibility settle around her shoulders. "I think we should see where this leads." As the applause died down and the warm conversations filled the air at Grace, Lily looked out at the people who had become her family, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. The journey had been long and full of unexpected turns, but it had also been beautiful. If you've been inspired by Lily's story of resilience, passion, and the power of community, don't forget to subscribe to stay connected with more heartfelt stories like this one. Hit that subscribe button and join us on more journeys filled with hope, music, and the strength found in unity.